Leon's not coming.
Liam got the night off.
It's his birthday. The least I could
Oh.
do.
Excellent. Yeah.
Oh, Leanne, All right, we are live on YouTube, Nick.
Okay. It is 6:30, so as such, I will call this meeting to order. Tonight is May 13th, 2021. This is the Town of Scarborough's Ad Hoc Charter Review Committee. Tody, could you please call the roll?
Mike Stevenson,
Here.
Mike Wood,
Yeah.
Annalee Rosenblatt,
Here.
Karen Shoup,
Here.
Mary Starr,
Here.
Richard Silkman,
Here.
Allison Bristol,
Here.
and Nick McGee.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I show that all of the members are here in attendance this evening. That's great. Our next item tonight is the approval of the minutes from April 22nd, 2021. I was not in attendance at that meeting, so I will abstain from this vote. There's someone like to make a motion to accept the minutes that were circulated.
I will make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
I have Mr. Wood making a motion. Is there a second?
So moved.
I have several seconds.
Oops.
All
I
right.
heard
Any
Mary
discussion?
Starr.
Mary Starr. Okay. Any discussion? All right. All in favor? I'll call the roll. Karen Shoup,
Yes.
Richard Silkman,
Yes.
Mike Wood,
Yes.
Mary Starr,
Yes.
Allison Bristol,
Yes.
Annalee Rosenblatt,
Yes.
Mike Stevenson,
I was absent, so I'll abstain.
Nick McGee. I was absent. I will abstain. Show that passing 6-0. Thank you very much. Also, just want to quickly, before we jump right into it, say thanks to Richard Silkman for running the meeting a couple weeks ago. I appreciate you stepping in, filling your vice chair duties. Hopefully they were easy on you.
Well, in fact, we get out about
Early.
half hour, 45 minutes early.
Are you saying that I'm inefficient with my meetings?
I'm not, it was just an observation. You can draw the conclusion.
Just stating the facts. Well, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Did a great job.
All right. So I know here we have the red line version. I did quickly chat with Tom a little earlier today, and with the leftover 97 section 9, I think it was 701.1. There was a little bit of cleanup left to do, and I thought maybe we should just try to tackle that real quick before we get into the red line. Does that sound fair to everyone?
Sure.
Okay. So I believe there was some proposed language circulated. Tom, I think you had a hand in that. And then as well as, was it Mr. Silkman? I think you had some proposed changes as well. And for the purposes here, I'm going to quickly share screen and pull up 9701 in the red line version, but you'll be able to see the actual language that's there. It's 97-101.
9071.
0.1 or 0.7.
907.1. And the title. You'll see it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, right there.
All right. So this was the section, and I don't know, Richard Silkman, if you wouldn't mind doing a quick recap, just for anyone at home that may have missed the last meeting of those discussions and what was kind of left out there for resolution.
Sure. The section itself deals with referendum regarding the issuance of general obligation bonds. And there was discussion around whether or not the intent was to cover just general obligation bonds or any long-term commitment made on the part of the town. The members of the committee felt that the intent is to cover the latter, that is any long-term commitment that's in excess of $600,000 should go to the voters for referendum. That way, there's no ability to, instead of, for instance, purchasing a major building, leasing it for 20 years. And that the intent is really around the long-term commitment for significant dollars. We wrestled a little bit with trying to get the language sort of off the top of our heads, and it became fairly confusing. So what the full committee did was it empowered, I think it was Mike Wood's subcommittee, to go back and with the help of the town folks, Tom Hall, to go back and sort of bring us back some language. And what you see here in the red line is the language that they brought back to the committee.
Thank you. So, Richard, did you want to, I know you had some suggestions on this. Did you want to present those here or during the step-by-step red line discussion process?
Whichever is most convenient, but it probably makes sense to go in order through the document. So why don't we just hold it off until we get to this section of the red line?
Okay, I'm comfortable with that. Is the rest of the committee comfortable with that approach?
Yes.
Sure, whatever
Yeah.
works.
Just one other thing, Nick, I did not circulate that to the entire committee. I wasn't sure about the appropriateness of doing something like that off the record, so to speak. And so what I did was only circulated it to Mike Wood as chair of the committee and to Tom as the town manager, and then I sent you a copy. So not everybody has seen that. I just wanted to let you know that.
Sure, and I think that's a good opportunity for us to discuss as we go through this. If there's a section in here that you think there's some language improvements off of what because I don't know if we'll get through this whole document. I doubt we'll get through this whole document this evening. But as we go, if there is language that you see and you wanted to kind of put something out there, I think that's okay ahead of time so we have a chance to digest it. Sometimes to make a decision quickly as it's being presented can be difficult. So I think in the, for practice sake, I would say include Liam and Tom and then have them, any suggested language changes, have them kind of distribute to the committee and we can see it ahead of time. But we'll see how we make out tonight.
Yeah, and just for the record, I very much like Richard's suggested language. I think it accomplishes what I was looking for, and I think it concurs with what the subcommittee reported out. It just does it better.
Yeah,
Right.
I would echo that too, so.
Absolutely.
All right, you guys can see me scrolling like a madman, right?
I'm gonna
Thank you.
follow mine because I gotta make it 125%.
Is that actually, do you need me to reduce the size here?
Bigger is always better.
That's at 125% there. And then when you see my screen, do you actually see my Zoom box as well, or is it in the way? You do see this. My Zoom box is showing up on your screens.
Yes.
Okay. So this
I
is
don't
going to be a little tricky. with
Nick,
me
I don't
doing-
think it's your Zoom box. I think
Oh.
we all have our little thumbnail that we can modify.
Okay. So as we go through this, try to use that blue raise my hand feature. It'll be a little easier as I try to navigate this. All right.
So Nick, could I just interrupt to take a minute to thank Tody for putting this together in the two colors? I printed
Absolutely.
off the first one and this became so much better. So I think it was Tody. So whoever did it, thanks so much.
And yeah, and same. That's Tody. The amount of work you've put into this is really greatly appreciated, and it's very helpful. All right. So with that, let's move into the next item of tonight's agenda, which is the red line version of our chapter 200. So recommended by subcommittees were noted in red. Recommendations by the committee as a whole are in blue. So the blue ones we've already kind of discussed as an entire body. The red ones, you may have not seen it if you weren't involved in the subcommittee. So I will go section by section, even though there's no changes into section 101. If there was a member here that wanted a clarification on a point, or maybe there was a suggestion that was sent to subcommittee that was not inserted into here, we can have a quick discussion as to Hopefully the chair would remember why or why not it was voted down or not included. And we do have the ability, of course, to, if there was something that was did not make it out of subcommittee, and there was a suggestion you really wanted the full committee to take up, there is a motion process you can make to have the full committee discuss that. Okay. So section 101.
Another question. You want us
yes.
to use the ham thing,
I do.
but that's so big, it covers all my screens. So the option to go find it is, I can't find it.
Can you try to do the exit full screen view? That might help you on the views you have.
I can give that a shot, but I don't know where it is because all I see is the document.
If you take your, Annalee, if you take your cursor to the bottom of the page, I know mine pops up when I bring my cursor down.
There it is. I found it. Thank you. Yeah,
You're welcome.
because all I saw was the choices on his screen.
All right. Here we go, folks. So I'm just going to read the title and the section. If there's something in there that needed added, subtracted, changed, something you want to comment on, just use the raise a hand feature. Otherwise, I'm going to move on. Section 101, incorporation. Give everyone a minute here. Okay, I don't see anyone. Section 102, powers of the town. Okay, see nobody with a hand up at this point. Article 2, Town Council, Section 201. Section 201 would read, the Town Council shall be composed of 7 members who shall be nominated and elected by the registered voters of the entire town according to the provisions of this charter for a term of 3 years, who shall serve until their successors are elected and qualified. Recommendation to move section 806 to section 201 from the full committee on 225. So this is a full committee change. Following the effective date of this charter, the following elected and appointed officials shall serve for no more than 3 consecutive full terms of office: members of the town council, members of the Board of Education, and full voting members of the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, or the sanitary district. Okay, that was something that we had constructed during our committee meetings. There's any language changes there? Okay, seeing no hands up, I'm moving on.
Well,
No,
there's hands up,
no hands up.
at least 3.
I'm not seeing it. I'm so sorry.
How can we fix that for you?
Working on it. Let's see. I'm gonna change my view.
I think, Nick, if you just go to the participants and click on that, you'll see whose hand is raised.
What do you guys see right now? Do you see like my larger panel? No?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I see 6 faces down the right-hand side of the screen and then the document.
Nick, if
Still
you
see the
like-
document?
Oh, yeah.
I
do.
see the document.
Down on the bottom, Nick, the bar pops up. You can click on participants.
Mine's at the top for some reason. I
Oh,
just got
okay.
it.
Okay,
Sorry.
sorry.
All right, so let's start with Allison Bristol.
Yes, really a question. I know that we had decided, or when we talked about this, that we had voted that not to pursue awards or districts as part of this. And then Tom clarified that actually making that change would not be in the purview of this committee. But the question is, can we make a recommendation outside of the charter to the town council that a commission be formed to explore wards or, combination of at-large and ward seats on the council?
Okay, that's a good question. And that's one I think we'll take up as a committee. Let's get through the original hands up comments and we'll come back to that. Annalee Rosenblatt.
So are we eliminating the title? It's just a clerical question. Because it's got a line through it. It won't have its
That
own
would be in
number.
section 806 would be eliminated, is what it looks like to me.
What? But the word limitation of terms of office won't be there anymore. It's just going to be a continuation of section 201.
Correct.
Okay.
Mike Wood.
Yeah, just as I read it, I think it's fine, except I wonder if there's better ways to write it. I know that the exercise tonight is not to be overly consumed with wordsmithing, but maybe at the end, instead of "or the sanitary district trustees," it would just be "or the sanitary district." I mean, you speak of the zoning board of appeals, not as individuals, but as a board, sanitary district as an entity. You do say full voting members of planning board, because I guess the planning board does have non-voting members, or at least
Alternates.
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 I don't know if the Board of Education has alternates, forgive me,
No.
and I know the council doesn't, so. I don't know, I just moved that we strike trustees.
Well, the only thing is the trustees are the only elected officials down there. It's not, to me, if you leave trustees off, then you're just saying the sanitary district in general is how I would look at it. For clarification, the trustees are the only elected body at the sanitary district. Does that make sense?
It's akin
Yeah.
to saying board, right? Sanitary district board, except for they call it sanitary district trustees.
Correct.
Okay, all right, when you have me look at it that way, I understand. Okay, thank you. Disregard.
Thanks, Mike. Richard Silkman.
Yeah, I just want to go back to that sanitary district trustee issue. And I'm not sure that, I mean, that we have any control over them. I mean, they're established by state law. And I have no problem putting this forward to the town council to look at. But I think we should, if we do it, we should indicate to them that somebody, the legal counsel for the town, ought to take a look at that and see whether or not that's even within our jurisdiction.
Excellent point. I think you're spot on. I don't believe we can dictate terms. They are a creature of the state unto themselves.
Yeah, and what I can do with something like that is put an asterisk and then a footnote with saying that this may not be within our purview, specifically related to the sanitary district. Okay, I like that suggestion. Thank you. Now back to Allison's question about making a recommendation for the council to possibly explore moving into districts. How does the full committee feel about making that recommendation? The recommendation would be to potentially explore moving into a district type setting. Any comments, thoughts? Jean Marie.
Well, the recommendation wouldn't be for the council to do that. You'd have to go to a commission, a charter commission. The council has nothing to do with that. But the council, I suppose, could call a charter commission. But I mean, that's a nuance there, but it's not, the council isn't going to say, oh, okay, now we're going to decide to be wards. It's got to go through a commission. Am I right, Mr. Hall?
Suspect
Yes.
you are, yeah.
Yes, you are.
But I think the recommendation of this committee is saying that there was sufficient support for encouraging the council to investigate the possibility of something of this nature. Be a pretty general statement, separate of the actual written document.
Well, am I remembering that it was a lot of people, I thought that it was pretty split, that people thought we should have districts or wards. But, you know, I hear and see a lot of things in every day, so I could be misremembering.
No, I think you're correct, Jean-Marie, and it might be worth noting that the vote that we took and show the actual vote is, you know, I think it was either a 4-4 tie, or I think it was a tie, or it failed 3-5 perhaps, but we can go back from the record and indicate what the vote was, but still it generated a decent amount of interest and discussion.
Well,
Mary
and
Starr.
where I'm going with that is just, to me, you didn't have enough interest in it. So I don't know if the council would take it up, but that's my own bias showing. So I'll shut up now.
Mary Star.
I guess I think it's probably been already discussed because I just wanted to check in to see what the vote was, but I think you already covered it. So I just would want to make it clear because I know that's not something I'm in favor of. So I just didn't want it to be suggested that there was a widespread appeal. For that.
Maybe if I had a topic, maybe a heading or a list of topics that were of greater interest, and just list them out so the council at least knew where some of our heavier, more intense discussions lied, and this would be one of those topics that would fall into that category.
I would look up the vote for you, but I can't with this, with your document on my screen, so.
I'm trying to get there.
Are you? Okay. Because if you have a different screen, I should have put this on my iPad, then I could open my computer screen.
Mike Wood.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick. I'm thinking like that and probably other subjects, conjured up some spirited debate among the group. So I would think our final report for the council could have, a section that that tells the council, some of the more interesting topics that we talked about and maybe some of the close votes, and the council may choose to explore, one or more of those topics that we felt were either out of our purview or were too close to call, if you will.
I think that's a fair way to approach it. Just kind of separate those, and so that they have a little bit greater visibility into those discussions. Is the committee generally supportive of that approach when we go to final draft? Generally.
Well, I am, but if it's a close vote, I think whichever way it went, which I can't remember, ought to be kind of reflected, I think, so.
It failed as a 4-4 vote.
It did, okay.
But during the discussion, there was oral suggestions that a couple of the members were going to vote one way and they ended up voting the other way. So, I think it was pretty close, and this was at the time when we'd only got 8 members, so we lost a member. I don't know what would have happened had our then vice chair still been on the committee, but it was a 4-4 vote and so failed.
Okay. Thanks for remembering. It still would have been close, assuming whichever way he voted.
Yes, yes.
And I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have been something we've been able to accomplish in this document. So it would have ended up under a separate set of recommendations anyways, correct?
I think so, yeah.
Right. So, okay. I think we'll take that approach.
Nick, I'm sorry, could you just repeat the approach?
I'm going to create, when we do the written up version of this for the committee and the report, I don't know how I'll exactly title the heading, but maybe something to the effect of topics of great interest or topics of interest, and just kind of highlight the areas that we had greater discussions on and the actual vote that was taken.
Okay.
So just to give the council a little bit of visibility into some of those topics.
Yep.
Even though there wouldn't be an official recommendation out of the committee. Okay, we ready to leave 201? And I'm sorry, there we go. There's my participant list. Okay. All right. 201, we'll consider good for now. 202, anyone have any interest in section 202? Seeing none, I'll move on to section 203, powers and duties. Seeing none, we'll go to 204.1. We had a kind of a clerical cleanup of making sure that it read the Zoning Board of Appeals instead of just Board of Appeals. Is there anything else in 204.1? Okay. 204.2. 204.3. 204.4, and this is where it gets fun. This is our first go around at a subcommittee recommendation that the full committee may not have had a chance to see. So Richard, I'll read it, and then Richard, Silkman, I'll call on you. 204.4 is, this would be new. It's an addition. It is not language that was previously incorporated. reads, new and amended ordinances for consideration by the council shall be accompanied by a net financial impact statement that identifies both short-term and projected annual impacts to the town budget. Richard Silkman.
Yeah, I have no particular problem with the language, but it just doesn't seem to fit in this section. I mean, the section is an enumeration of the powers of the town council, but this is not a power of the town council. I mean, all of the others are powers of the town council. And I looked through, I looked through the entire document and I couldn't find a place for it to fit in the charter, but I really don't think it belongs here.
So you couldn't find anywhere else it would fit a
No,
little bit better?
I looked through and there was no place to put it. I thought maybe it was, I thought maybe it would go in the ordinance section, but it doesn't flow out of any of the ordinance sections. We have votes, things that have to be considered for a vote. But maybe somebody else could figure out a better place to put it.
Mary Stark?
I don't have a better place to put it, but I guess I had a question. What is the reasoning? I would like to just know kind of the history of why this was put there, and why this was, so if I could hear from the chair or any of the members of the committee, I just would like to understand, the reasoning for this addition.
Yeah. Richard, did you want to take this one?
Well, this one wasn't our committee.
This wasn't our committee, yeah.
I'm sorry, Mike Stevenson, that was our committee.
Yeah, and I actually think, Nick, it was your suggestion.
So would you like me to tackle it?
Yeah, why not? Why not?
So the long and short of it is this is a something I thought might be helpful for not just the council, but for the people at home, understanding that the decisions that or changes that the council proposes to make has impacts to how the town operates. And having this information, and it's really about information, available to the public and being required before, 204.3 says enact, amend, and repeal ordinances, part of their powers, just making sure that before they do enumerate any of those powers or, utilize those powers, that they had a financial impact statement available to it. So the long and short story is I thought it was a good idea. And it was probably one of those things like, Richard Silkman, you suggested. I couldn't find a better spot for it, so I threw it in there, and our subcommittee discussed it, reviewed it, and thought it was at least decent enough to bring to the full committee. So, Mary Starr, do you have anything else? I don't know if I could help clarify better than that.
Yep, no, that's helpful. Thank you.
Allison Bristol.
Would it be better placed in Article 5, but the budget article, since it has to do with impacts to the town budget?
With all due respect, I don't think it belongs in the charter. I think it's better placed in the council rules, chapter 302. That's not in front of you, but that goes into far greater detail. It's kind of self-imposed requirements. If I could, as a practical matter, we have instituted a cover sheet, I'll call it, on every item. One of the items to be filled out is the fiscal impact of the proposal. That's not fail-safe, and I'll just bring up a very recent example of the growth management ordinance. The analysis that may be required for something of that magnitude is enormous, and frankly, staff is not capable of doing it. So I just bring that up as a very most recent example of something that would be very, very challenging to comply with.
I have Jean Marie Caterina with hands up. Thank you, Tom.
Hit the wrong button, sorry. Actually, I was gonna basically say the same thing Tom just did. As a member of the council and as the chair of ordinance, there are a lot of things that come through ordinance that don't really have a financial impact per se. For example, say you changed zoning to include something. There may not be a financial impact to it. And then as Tom said, there are other portion, other things that come up, it's like, so who's going to do all this work? And then what's the cost of that and the time involved? So I would agree, it doesn't belong in charter. Probably belongs in the rules and policies of the council if the council chose to take that up. But this is, it's overkill in my opinion, and it just, it's not going to fit.
All right, Mike Wood.
Yeah, I went online and I brought up the same thing. Town council adopted policies and resolutions. I think it is better to consider it that place and not the charter. I say add that to that addendum that we talked about, you know, and have the town council discuss this possibility a bit further so they can get into the weeds. But it's a good idea.
Thank you.
Worthy of more
So-
discussion.
So at this point, because it's brought through subcommittee, so we need a vote as a full committee as to whether it should be included in the new change. So if you want to make a motion, well, I'm sorry, I'm trying to minimize. Tough driving and sharing, I'll say that. Kudos to the town staff that does it a lot. So this, since I guess I brought that forward, I'll make a motion, and if it fails, it fails, and then I'll follow it up with a motion to include it into a topic of interest category. Okay. And so for that, boy, I wish.
Nick, would it be easier if I shared screen?
No, it's all right. I'll figure it out. 204.4 new and so my motion is to include the language as presented in 204.4 into the charter document.
So I'll second it for you.
All right, second discussion. Okay, we're going to call the roll. Mike Stevenson.
I think yes. I'd like to see it reviewed. If it doesn't pass at this level, but gets included in your list, then I think my vote is in favor for it.
So this is just the motion to include it into the charter.
Correct.
And if that fails, I'll make a motion to put it into general topics, just so you know.
Right.
Mike Wood,
No,
Karen Shoup,
No.
Allison Bristol,
No.
Mary Starr,
No.
Richard Silkman,
No.
Annalee Rosenblatt,
No.
Nick McGee. I'll say no.
Oh, thanks, Nick.
I think it makes a lot of sense to throw it into. I think they're right. I think this is probably a practice that if you can't find a home for it in the charter, it makes you think that there's probably some other rules. And even if I looked at the town manager section and we wanted to, saddle him with this responsibility, it still seems like something that probably should be more of a council decision. I hope this is included, which my next motion I will hope to see succeed, which is that this committee make a recommendation to include it into the topic of interest for further council exploration. Is there a second? I have a second for that.
Who seconded that? I
That
didn't.
was Richard Silkman.
Oh, okay.
And any discussion? Okay, Mike Stevenson,
Yes.
Mike Wood,
yes.
Karen Shoup,
Yes.
Allison Bristol,
Yes.
Mary Starr,
Yes.
Richard Silkman,
Yes.
Annalee Rosenblatt,
Yes.
Nick McGee, yes. Okay, I show that 8-0. Thank you, everyone.
That's 8-0. Okay.
Nick, Nick, to make it easier on you,
Yes.
let me monitor the participants and I'll make you aware of when hands are raised. And then if I were you, I'd let Tony call the roll if that's easier for you. We're
Sure,
here to help.
That's fine. Thank you. All right, 204. So this is going to go to general topic of interest by 8-0. Okay, I'm just making a note. Okay, so what happened right below it, as you can see, since we tried to create a new space for it, we did a little renumbering dance, which I don't believe is necessary. The subcommittee recommended just changing the numbering because of that. So I would make a motion to keep the original numbering in the document. Is there a second to that? As for section 204?
Second.
Discussion? Okay, call the roll.
Mary Starr,
Yes.
Mike Wood,
Yes.
Karen Shoup,
Yes.
Annalee Rosenblatt,
Yes.
Mike's, oh gosh, if I don't see the names, that's pretty bad. I'm sorry. Mike Stevenson,
Yes.
Allison Bristol,
Yes.
and
Yes.
thank you.
And yes.
And thank you. If I don't have them written down,
Show that as unanimous. Thank you, Tony. So there's in blue here, recommendation to increase stipend and strike the second sentence by the full committee. That is the note of what has changed in section 205.1. This was a full committee change. Are there any questions or comments on this section? And Tom, I'm counting on you to monitor the hands up.
I am.
Okay. All right. 205.2.
Mike Wood has his hand raised.
Okay. Mr. Wood.
Yeah, can you just help my memory a little bit? Why did we strike the language referring to ordinance, changed by ordinance? Because it's not relevant? I mean, because we've never done it that way?
I think that was the reason, Mike, that nobody ever would do it. And so we just took it out and said, these are the salaries.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions on 205.1? Okay, moving on to 205.2. 205.3. 206. 207. 208. 209.1. 209.2. Section 210. Section 211. Section 212. This is a recommendation from the subcommittee. It reads, as presented from the subcommittee, the town council shall determine its own rules and order of business. The council, including appointed, elected, ad hoc committees and boards, shall keep a written record of its proceedings, and the record shall be open to public inspection. Whenever possible, these meetings shall be broadcast and recorded on a widely accessible platform for future use.
Richard Silkman has his hand up.
It's only a typo. I believe that the noun in that sentence is plural because it's council plus boards. And so it probably should read, shall keep written records of their proceedings, and the records shall be open to public inspection.
I believe that is a good catch. Any other hands up on that? Richard, do you want to make a motion to include the plural version into this language?
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
I have a second. Discussion. Seeing none. Tody, could you call a roll?
Allison,
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
Mary
Oh,
Starr.
I had a, yeah.
Mary Starr?
Yes, for me, it's just helpful when we, could we just always, like, when it's a change by committee, would it be possible just to hear a little bit about why the change was suggested? Because I don't know, for me, I just like to know where it's coming from, but I'm not sure if that's, I don't want to make it too onerous or anything for anyone, but.
Mike, I don't know if you want to jump on this, but I remember this in subcommittee, and we had a pretty good discussion.
Yeah, I think we sort of concluded that the two elements of this really, the people that should be covered by this particular section should be extended beyond just the town council, and that the only keeping a written record was a bit old-fashioned, and now we were using, Zoom and recording and a bunch of other, social media platforms in other areas of the charter. We figured these changes were just appropriate.
But what I'm reading, this is saying you have to have a written record. So just having a Zoom or recording of it is not enough. Is that what this is? To me, that's how it's reading, that there must be a written record.
And I think there are written records, Tody, is that right?
Yes, there are. There motion action records on some meetings, and then more detail with planning board and zoning board.
Oh, okay.
Yes, there are.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Allison Bristol?
Yeah, I was just going to add that written record was already part of the charter. And I think the idea was, and it could have been with the advent of COVID, a lot of other meetings have been recorded via Zoom, and it's very helpful to be able to actually hear or participate in the meeting versus just reading minutes that, would distill the conversation as well.
And I'll just thank you, Allison. I'll add to that too, which is we tried to craft the language knowing that technologies change. We know there are platforms out there like Zoom, YouTube, where people can be watching these meetings. But 10 years from now, when everyone sits back down to do this charter again, those might not be the most widely used software or means that people are using for broadcast. So we try to keep the language flexible for that reason, without identifying exactly what should be used, but just knowing that the intent is there, that we want broadcast and recorded if possible. Mary?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I forgot to lower. Sorry about that.
Nick, if I just could offer a kind of a practical perspective, just appreciate by including all these others, and we do make every effort and have for some time to provide written record and even broadcast when we can. But there are dozens of committees. And so we're probably talking about 4 or 5 members of staff that are responsible to help support all of these. So there are some practical challenges with keeping pace. And frankly, Zoom has afforded an opportunity that is likely it will exist in the future, but as we move back to in-person, it's not as easy to simply do hybrid meetings, to do some in-person and some remote. And so there's going to be a transition period that I don't know exactly how that's all going to shake out. And I guess just lastly, there is comfort for me in saying when practical, just appreciate if they're not being done in council chambers where there's good audio video capability. It's very difficult to capture good audio and video in most other locations. And so in spite of our best efforts, the quality is very poor. So I just offer that up as just a practical perspective on that requirement.
And I think the subcommittee was kind of sensitive to that too, knowing that there are still limitations. I have a question either for Tody or Tom, maybe one of you could help out on this. So, asking, appointed or elected committees to take their minutes, there's typically a secretary that's appointed. Is there ever a point in time where the secretary of a board is actually being asked to take the minutes of the meeting rather than staff?
Yeah, it happens on occasion. I'll be honest, fairly rarely. That's not a coveted position typically. But there are occasions where we do have volunteer secretaries, and we thank them every time, for sure.
Just wondering out loud whether that should be more of a practice for more of the, quote unquote, minor committees.
It could be, but just appreciate once someone does that, then those minutes need to get into Tody's hands, and then need to be provided at the appropriate place on the website. I sound like I'm whining, but there's just a lot of steps to make sure that all of that can be accomplished. And so just the other thing for reference, we do have chapter 302A, which is specifically designed for ad hoc committees of all sorts. And it does lay out those expectations. I think in large part, that territory is already covered by council action, just for what it's worth.
So as a practical matter, Tom, why wouldn't the zoning board of appeals have the people from the planning office be the staff responsible? Why would Tody or you or Liam, that's what I'm assuming, maybe that's not true. always have to be responsible to do all that.
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting, there are other staff members, but it's still a limited number.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
In the planning and codes office, there is a staff member that does do the minutes for the
Oh,
planning
okay.
board and the zoning board.
Yeah, I would think, good notes from there is important.
But just appreciate, we've got this charter process going on. We've got another ad hoc process going on. We're having 4 meetings a month on top of everything else. And to Tody's credit, she's turning these minutes out in between meetings every time. So I just look for some patience that we're not going to be able to meet this requirement to everyone's expectations, just so long as people appreciate that.
Yeah, and again, I think we're at a stage 2 where this is a recommendation to the council, and
Yep.
they'll have their shot at this as well. So, Allison Bristol.
Yeah, question for Tom. So I know I think I know that, it's still up in the air whether or not, say, council will continue with Zoom and or hybrid meetings. So I guess I'm trying to understand if we're saying keeping written records for all of these entities is the challenge, or if they're all doing Zoom meetings right now, that if some of them, the Zoom meeting that's on YouTube, and I'm assuming that's kind of labor-free because it's being recorded and then it gets uploaded and it lives someplace for a period of time. Are we saying that we only want some committees or boards or the council to be required to have written records and others being a recorded broadcast of on a platform of some sort?
The council actually dictates which ones they want recorded, and the chair actually has the authority to direct that if they wish.
The council chair or the committee chair?
Committee
It is.
chair. Go ahead, Tony.
No, it is a committee chair.
Okay.
And so in many cases, in all cases, they have written record. I assure you of that. In many cases, they do record their proceedings, but not all, certainly.
Okay. So with this, I think we'd probably be more proper here to make the motion, second it, discussion it, and then vote it up or down. So I'll make a motion to adopt the new language from the subcommittee in section 212.
And I believe we already have a motion and a second on the floor.
Do we?
I believe so.
You were just ready to call the vote before
Yeah.
Barry spoke up.
Whew.
Yeah,
Okay.
Richard Silkman made a motion and Mike Wood seconded it.
Right.
That's excellent work, everyone.
Okay. We're there for you.
Yeah. So more discussion on this? All right, let's do Tody, could you call the
Yes.
roll?
Allison Bristol,
Yes.
Mike Wood,
Yes.
Richard Silkman,
Yes.
Annalee Rosenblatt.
Muted, sorry, yes.
Thank you. Mary Starr,
No, I guess I'm kind of concerned about it being so global. I'd prefer it to be a little bit more specific, I guess, on which have to do written records, but so I'm a no.
Michael Stevenson,
Yes.
Karen Shoup,
Yes.
and Nick McGee.
Yes.
Thank you. It passes. Thank you.
All right. Section 213. We have subcommittee recommendation that prior to the enactment of any ordinance, town council shall hold at least one public hearing notice, which shall be given at least 15 days. That is a change from 7 in advance by publication in a newspaper having a circulation in said town, as well as on the town's website, e-newsletter, and by posting notice in a public place. However, nothing contained herein shall be deemed to require publication of the ordinance itself. Passage of said ordinance shall be effective at 12 a.m. on the following day enactment or at such other date specified therein. All right. Do we have a motion to accept the changes recommended by the subcommittee in 213 heading?
I'll make that motion.
Mike Wood, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Richard Silkman seconds. Is discussion. Allison Bristol.
actually, I have a question on this, rereading this now. When we're saying, however, nothing contained herein shall be deemed to require publication of the ordinance itself. Generally, when an ordinance is at council, it's attached as part of the agenda. So I guess the question becomes, how does the public form an opinion about an ordinance if it hasn't been published?
Tony, you should respond to this, but it's not practical that we publish the entire substance of every ordinance. It would cost a fortune, frankly. So
That's so
Oh,
true.
you mean publish in the newspaper or that
Yeah.
kind of thing?
Right.
As opposed to posting it online?
yes,
Would-
Yeah, I got it.
this refers to legal public notice. So
I got it. Never mind. Thank you.
Because the agenda items are posted, so therefore it is
Yeah.
notifying the
And
public.
I was
Okay.
reading publication as posting it on the town website, but never mind.
Mary
Thank you.
Stark?
I just had a question with increasing this to 15 days, because I know passing an ordinance, as I recall, it requires like 2 separate meetings, and then like how long, like what will this do to the timeline as far as passing an ordinance? I guess it adds on another week. Like I just wondered how that would impact things. If I don't know if Tom or Tody could explain that.
yeah, an ordinance requires a first reading, public hearing, and second reading. More often than not, current council anyway, separates those into 3 distinct pieces, and the council meets essentially every other week.
Mhm.
So by imposing this, that would effectively put it out 4 meetings rather than 3 meetings. And I say that because presuming something passes in first reading, you wouldn't have the ability of having public hearing at the next council meeting,
Right.
because it's more than likely closer than 15 days from first reading. Does that make any sense?
That does, that's what I was kind of wondering. I was kind of wondering if it would extend it. So, okay, thank you.
Mary?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I just have a question of Tody. Tody, there are certain other things prescribed in state law, I believe, in terms of length of notice.
Mhm. I know the planning board and zoning board, their requirements are a little different than ours. Theirs, I believe, is 10 days. And it depends on the ordinance, like our marijuana ordinance, we have to do a 10-day notice prior to the meeting and notify abutters. So, and that's doable prior to a meeting, but I have concern with the length of time this one is going to be required for 15 days. Because like you said, Tom, it's going to push it out further for the public hearing. Because you have to wait for the approval of the council at the first reading, if that's the way it goes, before you can publish it.
I guess just another observation I'd make, in the past, and Mike Wood may recall this, councils are able to take second reading the same night as public hearing. There's nothing that says it has to be separated by any period. Again, recent councils have chosen to do kind of 3 distinct steps. I fear this would may have an unintended consequence of having councils be forced to do public hearing and second reading on the same night. And if so, I think there's a huge loss, because that separation gives the public 2 more weeks to digest, and for the council to digest what they heard in public hearing, as opposed to being forced to vote the same night. I can't say that's for certain, but I think it may happen depending on the time demands of a certain matter in front of the council.
Annalee Rosenblatt?
So I have 2 questions. One is because I maybe misunderstood something. So if they can have a first reading, a second reading the same night, how do they give the
No.
7-day notice that's required now?
No, they can have public hearing and second reading same night.
I see. So there would have to be a 7-day notice prior to that if they had planned to have a second reading and adoption the same night.
No, you would have to publish the public hearing, but the council on the agenda, you could either put it on the agenda, it's a public hearing and second reading, or if the council so choose to make a motion to have it the same night.
So when does
there's
the
two different
public
ways.
find out if they want to make public comment that this is even going to be what it is, the content, what's going to be discussed?
Well, an ordinance is presented at first reading, so there's substance there.
Okay,
Mhm.
but I thought I maybe misunderstood. That's why I'm asking the question. I
Mhm.
thought you said they could have first reading and second the same night.
No,
Oh, then that's okay.
no.
If this was changed to 14 days, would that solve the problem since the meetings are 14 days apart?
Potentially.
Is it-
Although, I just appreciate you need to put the legal ad in the paper. There's some day or so associated with, for Tody to make the
Right,
press deadlines as well. This is worded at least 7 days. It doesn't say it shall be 7. So as Tody suggests, we have other higher requirements and other ordinances depending on the weight of the matter, I suppose you could say. So this is a limitation, a bottom limitation, not a upper one.
I appreciate that. So my last comment is that no matter what comes out, I think this committee that's working on number 2 there, that Mike's committee, is saying that sometimes there's not sufficient public notice for the public to participate. And so that's just a comment that going forward, when it says no less than, or whatever, at least, to the extent you can make an effort to make it more than 7, I guess people would appreciate that.
Understood the intent. Yep.
Thanks, Annalee. Mike Wood?
Yeah, all good comments. I agree. I do recall that anytime the council would consider doing public hearing and second reading the same night, it wasn't very popular with the public,
Mm.
for obvious reasons. And oftentimes, the first time the public really gets a taste of what's being discussed is that first reading. Regardless of what, even though it's been notified, well, not really, not necessarily. That's what gets their juices going, if you will, and an opportunity for them to prepare themselves to make comment for the council, which is that public hearing. So although I don't disagree with Tom, I don't really think that this really will have a bad side to it if it's enacted within the intent of it. But yeah, that's all. So.
Thanks, Mike. I'll just chime in real quick. I guess in the back of my head, what I've always asked myself is what's so urgent that buying an extra week of public notice, is being enacted. And if it really is to the point of enactment is necessary, right below it is the emergency ordinance provision. It might stretch out some more common timelines, but I don't necessarily feel like giving the public more notice to kind of reflect and make sure their calendar. I mean, everyone's got some pretty busy calendars these days. Trying to reserve some time if they're really interested in the topic so they can attend. So I think that's where this was, the intent was just a little extra time doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I fully appreciate the intent, and I'm just offering perspective from being in the trenches. You can't conceive of the sort of urgency that a matter might have based on any number of factors. I would just appeal to the group. The reference to the e-newsletter, I don't think is, in my opinion, I suggest you strike that. I mean, that is meant to be a fairly light communication tool, communicating items of substance through those means. It was never the intent, and I think it's just not the appropriate place for it. I mean, what we do is provide links to the council agenda, those sorts of things for ease, but to provide public notice through that means, I think, really starts to change the flavor of that communication tool.
Thanks, Tom. Annalee?
So based on what I've heard, I would move to amend the 15 to 14 and to strike e-newsletter.
I have a motion to amend. Is there a second?
A second.
Mike Wood, second. Discussion on the amendment. Mike Stevenson.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate Tom's operational comments in connection with the 15 days, and certainly if 14 days makes it more manageable, I'd certainly run with that proposal. Certainly from a personal point of view, 7 days notice is not enough for me. Having said that, if there's something interesting on the horizon, I should, make some time for it. But I think only requiring publication in a newspaper is way out of date. I think we concluded during our discussions in our subcommittee that the e-newsletter was a great addition to it, along with the town's website and other more up-to-date communication methods. And I think we tried to articulate it in the wording that's in there now. So I would not want to strike that or everything along those lines from it.
Thanks, Mike. Mary Starr.
Yeah, I would still be concerned about the 14 days. I just don't think that's really enough time. Like I was going to make an amendment for 10 days. So I don't know how that works if we need to, if that can also be considered.
Well, let's deal with the amendment at hand.
Yeah.
We'll start
We
with
have to vote this amendment.
Yeah, that's what I figured. That's what I figured. I just wanted to throw that out there though, because I think the 14 days that doesn't necessarily give quite enough time. I think if for Tody to to get that in the newspaper, all that. So I think 14 days is pretty tough.
Also, can I just comment? You can't post a notice unless the council has approved the ordinance, the first reading. So if we have a first reading, say we had a first reading on an ordinance on the 5th, there's no way I could post that notice. It wouldn't be even heard before the council until June, because the 14 days prior is the 5th, if I'm calculating it right. It would be the day that the meeting was held at the council on the first reading. So you're looking at 14 days prior to the next meeting, it wouldn't work. You'd have to push it out to, the 14 days would have to be noticed for the June 2nd meeting. So you're looking at a number of weeks.
I think that just to note though, it says prior to the enactment of any ordinance, then there needs to be a public hearing within 15 days. So
Correct.
that if it pushes out, if it's now every other council meeting that you're passing ordinances, I guess my remaining question's always been, what's the hurry? Why are we buying? If that's what it does is delays back-to-back ordinances being passed in back-to-back meetings, does that really harm the operation of the town versus give the public more time for informed input? That's I guess that would be my comment on that. Jean Marie.
Yeah, I just want to comment on the e-newsletter. The e-newsletter goes out on a regular schedule. It's like twice a month on a regular date. I don't see the e-newsletter as appropriate for this because of that, and for the aforementioned reasons that were given by others. I'm wondering, because you got to remember, this is a charter that's for 10 years. 10 years from now, people may look at that and go, what the hell is an e-newsletter? What the hell is a website or whatever? I don't know what language they're using, like in the state or whatever. I've seen things like available by electronic means, or I've seen some wording around that, but I'm just thinking you're going to want to make it broader and make it so that it's easier for any council subsequent for the next 10 years to give notice that makes sense, but doesn't lock them into certain means. Am I making sense by what I'm saying?
It's similar to what we had discussed at the previous section, where we tried to leave it flexible and vague as how to, to document some of these meetings, whether it was a YouTube or something. We just kind of left it vague. We understand what you're saying though. Mary Starr, I see your hand is up.
Oh,
Again.
sorry
Nope.
about that.
All right, so this is still, we have an amendment. Any further discussion on the amendment? Allison Bristol.
Rather than saying e-newsletter, do we want to say sort of as a broad category, e-communication? And my thought being, I know that you can, that residents can choose to get an alert when new agendas and that kind of thing are posted. So, that certainly is an opportunity to get, the information from the town, but you have to sign up for it, but you have to sign up for the newsletter too. So would an e-communication or e-blast be a better, broader term?
I don't know if you want to do e-communication, maybe electronic communication.
Electronic communication,
yeah.
yeah.
Mike Wood.
Yeah, after hearing from folks, and I appreciate the dialogue. I agree. I don't think e-newsletter is a good choice here. I appreciate the intent, but like it's been said before, it comes out on a scheduled basis, and you'd have to upset that schedule depending on the business in front of the council as it relates to ordinances. So other than that, I don't have any problem with the way it's written, but I think e-newsletter should be stricken. Maybe something more general. I mean, the way I read it now, as a minimum, we have to put in the newspaper. And as it's proposed, it would be the newspaper and the town's website. And, you could add some general language such as, or any other, or you could say, and any other additional methods, that the council or whatever. I don't know. I need something more general, like to what everyone's been saying. E-newsletter is too restrictive, I think.
Thanks, Mike. Annalee, I saw your hand up.
I think the motion is to delete e-newsletter, but if we wanted to replace it with a broader word, I would consider that a friendly motion to my motion. If Mike agrees to the second, we don't have to do another motion. We can just replace the word if somebody has something better.
Allison Bristol.
Yeah, I just also wanted to agree with what Mike Stevenson said, is that, a newspaper publication is so antiquated at this point that if it's a public notice, most people don't get a print newspaper anymore. I know the Press Herald, if that's the publication we use, that they have a online public, section that's just public notices that you can check. But I think it's kind of, if it's published in a general newspaper like that, I think it's just buried and kind of meaningless. So posting in a public place also, I mean, maybe it's posted at town hall, but most people go into town hall if they're, renewing their license or something like that, or their registration. So the town website becomes important. And I think an e-communication or something that's beyond newspaper, or I think we also talked about, I don't think you want to get specific with the newspaper, but I would guess that the leader or the forecaster would be more widely read, a public notice in one of those publications than, say, the Portland Press Herald.
No.
But it might not be around in 10 years as well.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
if that's specific, right?
Exactly. So I think the point is to give notice where people are going to see it.
Sure. Tom Hall, I think you have your physical hand up. The blue hand helps me better.
Well, no, as host, I don't have,
Oh, you can't do it?
I don't believe I can.
Okay.
I just want to remind you, council action has the weight of law, and their action has consequence. Could be financial. It could have great consequence. And so the quickest way to overturn something, if there's a legal dispute, is a faulty process. So I plead with you. On one hand, I appreciate you wanting to be general and add some flexibility, but that's the stuff lawsuits are made of. So there needs to be absolute clarity for all involved as to what's required.
Appreciate that, Tom.
Ambiguity is very problematic, I think, in this regard. And I'm not disputing the intent here whatsoever. Just as an aside, the council has put in a system where we give push notifications. So if someone that subscribes to our newsletter says, I'm interested in zoning board, planning board, and council, we send you an email with the agendas automatically if you are so interested. So the council will be very receptive to the intent, but I'm very nervous about not being very clear about what the expectation is, so we can make sure to meet the requirement.
Thank you. So just I'll weigh in with my 2 cents. I'm actually comfortable with the amended, the motion to amend it 14 days and striking E's newsletter as it's proposed. I think that having it posted on the website is fine. As staff has pointed out, you can access it. It's available if you're willing to look and want to know about it. So, part of me is, you can lead a horse to water. But at this stage, I think we can all agree that the website is probably going to be standard for the next 10 years. Newspapers hopefully will still be around for 10 years. And at that point, I feel like the town has probably fulfilled some of its duty to make that information available. So, for what it's worth, are we ready to move the question to a vote? Good. All right. Tody, can you call, and just to refresh everyone's memory, the amendment motion is for a 14-day, so striking 15, making to 14, and to strike E newsletter.
Allison Bristol,
Yes.
Mike Wood,
Yay.
Richard Silkman,
Yes.
Annalee Rosenblatt,
I'm sorry, I keep muting. Yes.
okay, Mary Starr,
No.
Michael Stevenson,
Yes.
Karen Shoup,
No.
and Nick McGee.
Yes.
It passes. Thank you.
So now we're on to the main motion, which would alter section 213's general title, the body of paragraph here to read, prior to the enactment of any ordinance, town council shall hold at least one public hearing, notice of which shall be given at least 14 days in advance by publication in a newspaper having circulation in said town, as well as on the town's website, and by posting notice in a public place. However, nothing contained herein shall be deemed to require publication of the ordinance itself. Passage of said ordinance shall be effective at 12 a.m. on the day following the enactment or at such other date specified therein. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none. Tody, do you want to call?
Yep. Allison Bristol,
I'm sorry, what are we voting on?
the main motion is amended.
Which is 14 days and e-newsletter is gone.
Yes.
Okay, Mike Wood,
Yes.
Richard Silkman,
Yes.
Annalee Rosenblatt,
Yes.
Mary Starr,
No.
Michael Stevenson,
Yes.
Karen Shoup,
No.
and Nick McGee.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Section 213.1. Section 214. Somehow we got Tody a huge raise in here. No, just kidding. Town clerk shall be appointed by the town manager and confirmed by the town council. Town clerk shall act as a clerk of the town council and shall keep a public record of all proceedings of the town council, including appointed elected ad hoc committees and boards, including all roll call votes and other duties as assigned by the administrative code and by law. We have a motion to accept the recommendation or adopt the recommendation of the subcommittee on this. Richard, are you making a motion, or we need a
No,
motion motion and a second just to discuss it?
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, there should be a comma after boards. Grammatical issue only, nothing else.
Thanks.
So the town clerk shouldn't the subcommittee at least make a motion for its own suggestion?
It'd be nice. Do I have a
To
motion?
get the discussion going, because it's
I'll make
crazy.
a motion to approve the the change as written.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a
Including the
second?
couple after boards.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Second by Mike Stevenson. Okay, discussion. Mr. Silkman,
Only to note that there should be a comma after the word boards.
thank you. Any other discussion on this?
I think it's forgive me, I sound very critical tonight, and perhaps I am, but I think this is well-intended but ill-placed. You're now tasking the clerk with all this responsibility. That's just physically not possible. This intent is really to record the proceedings of the chief elected body of the council of the town, which is the town council. And I think you're, again, well-intended, but I think it's ill-placed.
I'll just clarify real quick that it says it just shall keep a public record. So I think we're talking about housing the public records.
That's how I'm reading it.
Me too. That's how I read it. Not that she has to make the record.
Correct.
It just all goes through the clerk's office. Is that the intent?
I believe that was the intent of the subcommittee.
I have no doubt that's the intent. I don't think it's works well in this context myself.
The town clerk shall be.
Mary Starr?
I agree with Tom. I think it's, yeah, I just think it could be misconstrued to mean that all of those notes, and to me that even if it were just keeping the public record, that still is a huge task on top of the many tasks Tody already does so amazingly well. So to me, it's too much. But
Guess my follow-up question would be if Tody's not keeping record of these things already, who is? I think it clarifies that within the town structure that it should be fall under the town clerk to house that information. Richard Silkman.
And I was going to make the same point. I mean, earlier on, we required a written record of all of these entities that wasn't in the charter before. Now we have a written record. It has to be kept someplace. And it seems to me that it ought to be kept with the town clerk. And so I'm with you, Nick, on that. If there's another place that it should be kept, then we should specify where it should be kept.
I don't know if this, I know in my job description, it states that I shall maintain the records of, and I think it's in the administrative code too, that the record keeper shall, which is me, shall keep a public record of all the meetings and whatnot. So I believe it's in the administrative code.
Right. I think this is just clarifying it in our charter. And Tody, you were part of the subcommittee when we discussed this. And I mean, maybe you were being polite. I don't remember you expressing any huge concerns about housing the information. I think you were already required to.
I am required to by the administrative code.
Correct. Any, Mike Stevens.
My objection stands for what it's worth.
So is the concern over the word shall keep as opposed to house or maintain, or, you know, is there a better word in there?
No, it's a reoccurring theme. Frankly, from my perspective, you're trying to use the charter to do way too much. We have other means to be more specific and granular. Administrative Code, Chapter 302 and 302A. Again, I don't criticize the intent, but I just don't think it's well placed. It should be placed, much of this, in the town charter.
Richard Silkman.
Tom, I generally agree with you, but I think in this instance, it's consistency. Back in section 212, we expanded the obligation to maintain written records. And I think that all this section does is it just places these written records in a location. And so if we're going to do 212, I think we really have to do this. Otherwise, there's a gap in terms of a logic to it.
Fair enough. I think I stated my concerns with 212 as well. So,
Okay, yep.
All right, any other discussion on this? All right, seeing none, Tony, could you call it?
Allison Bristol,
Again, we're voting to,
Accept the language as
Accept the
proposed by the
language.
subcommittee?
yes,
Mike Wood,
Yes.
Richard Silkman,
Yes.
Annalee Rosenblatt,
Yes.
Mary Starr,
No.
Michael Stevenson,
Yes.
Karen Shoup,
No.
Nick McGee.
Yes.
Motion passes.
6-2.
215.1. Independent annual audit. Any concerns or questions here? 215.2. Town manager, section 301. Section 302. Section 303.1. Section 303.2. Section 303.3. Section 303.4. Section 303.5. Section 303.6. Section 303.7. Section 303.8. Section 303.9. Section 304. Section 305.
Can I just quickly ask, does that mean even if you take one day off, this has to happen?
The town manager may, with the consent of the town council, designate by letter filed with the town clerk, a qualified administrative officer of the town to perform the duties of the town manager during temporary absence or disability. In the event of failure of the town manager, make such designation, the town council may by resolution appoint any administrative officer to the town to perform the duties of the town manager until the town manager returns or the disability ceases.
Because temporary absence, it doesn't say a week or 3 days or,
No, effectively,
yeah.
practically speaking, in this day and age, with a few exceptions, we're in constant communication as needed. So
You're never absent, really.
no. But I do have a standing, of course, I have an assistant manager now, and by virtue of that, he in my absence is the manager. If I'm available, if there's something important, I expect I'll be consulted. But there are occasions I traveled out of country a couple of years ago and I was simply not available. So, it's important to have this provision.
Well, it is, but I'm thinking it for one day, it's onerous. Now that you have an assistant, and if his job description says he takes over in your absence, then why you shouldn't have to file anything.
It's a standing letter, Annalee. It's a standing letter,
Oh,
or in the
okay.
case of the assistant manager, it's in his job description. So
Right,
not like
okay.
I do it when I take off for an afternoon.
I guess my question, and maybe you just answered it, Tom, but for the subcommittee that handled this one, I think one of the recommendations was to actually state that those duties would be fulfilled by the assistant town manager. And I didn't know if that was the reason, Tom, that you had kind of a standing letter already on file designating that, and it just didn't think it needed clarification in the charter. But I'm just curious.
I don't think it needs clarification here. Prior to the assistant, I didn't have a standing letter. I appointed a number of senior staff members depending on the length of my absence. So I changed it up on occasion.
Jean Marie?
I was just going to say that the word may in there gives the wiggle room. It doesn't say that he will. It says he may. I mean, it's a fine line, but it is a legal distinction.
Mm-hmm.
I had no objection. It was just a question because it seemed a
Sure.
little onerous somehow, but I accept what's been said. No problem.
All right. Section 306. Okay.
So you saw, Tom, it came out of committee. Nobody, no at will employment anymore if that passes the legislature.
I can't imagine it will.
I hope not.
Let's see. How ambitious are we feeling? Do you guys want to? I mean, we're 5 minutes from 8. Thinking we could cut it here and get into the Department of Education perhaps at next meeting. How does everyone feel about that tactic?
Sounds
Works for
good.
me.
Jean Marie?
Yeah, and maybe I'm stepping on toes here a bit, but I'm curious as to if there's been no action on any of these unmarked paragraphs and sections, why do we need to go over them unless someone wants to bring it back up? Because it's taking a lot of time just for you to go through and say section 402 qualifications, and then wait a minute. Well, that's just me.
I think,
Okay,
and
so
yeah, and I'll just say, just because the subcommittees were filled with just 3 members each, and clearly we have a more than that on the full committee, and somebody may at one point have had some language they want considered that clearly didn't make it out of subcommittee, but still may want to bring up to the full committee.
but I would
like-
think
yeah.
that they could do that. You could just open it up, go through what you red marked, you blue marked, then say, now I'm going to open it up. Does anyone have anything from any other sections that they want to bring in? But that's just a matter of, I'm just trying to help you move this along faster or a little more efficiently, but I'm fine with what you're doing. It's just, the time that it's taking to do this.
Yeah, I don't think we're spending too much time if nobody has a comment. I mean, unless it's a clarification. But personally, unless my committee agrees with me, disagrees with me, I like the idea of being thorough at this level, because once we get through this, we're looking at a final draft document that we're going to have to kind of vote on. So, Mike, I saw your hand go up. What, Mike Wood? You all set?
Yeah, you just took the words right out of my mouth. Although I respect what Jean Marie's saying, and we all want to be efficient. I like the exercise, and I think, just reading the title and then pausing is, I think, a good exercise for us to maybe have some second thoughts. So.
Yeah, and I think going into the next meeting, knowing that this is the way we'll operate it, if we did have those sections, it might be able to be a little bit faster with the reading of it, and if you're prepared with your recommendation or question on a section. So, okay.
I move to
Allison.
adjourn.
I have
sorry.
Allison with a
Yeah,
hand up.
I just had one more question. So again, with process, so once we go through this, then I'm assuming we vote on the document as a whole to present to council, and then it goes to council. So are we looking at a tentative date that it might go to council, or how will that work?
I think we're leaning towards June here. I think by next meeting, hopefully we'll be able to get through the rest of the document. And at the follow-up meeting, I would have a draft report ready for your review and submission for a vote.
I think the
So-
council will determine when it's on their agenda.
Right.
Yeah, so we'll finish our work, and then the council will let us know when it's on the agenda.
Yep.
Okay.
As long as they
thank-
give us that 14 days real quick, right? No, just kidding.
Thank you for explaining the process.
Yeah, just so I could fill in a little bit, the council will need some time to kind of work through this. And effectively, they'll need to have arrived at their decision as to which of these items, if any, go to the voters in November. They need to make that decision by first week of September. So, your timing would give the council kind of July and August to do their stuff, probably more informally on a workshop basis, I suspect. So I think that timing works out very well to put it in place for a November vote.
So do you see the committee through the chair being able to advocate and talk about why we did certain things as opposed to just sending a written document and then having no discussion. Have
And
you-
yeah, just so you know, my intent was to provide it kind of a cover letter, which I kind of indicated like we would have one of the sections of the cover letter would be the topics of interest section where we describe kind of the bigger discussions we've had. And that as well as maybe some of the high points of the, kind of the thinking of the full board as to why some of the changes were made. So at least they get a, kind of a primer before they see the language and they scratch their heads and say, why the heck would they do that? That's my intent, is to give them, kind of an executive summary, I would guess you could call it.
Yeah, and Lee, you might recall past similar committees have, I'll call it, provided like a little discussion around the substantive proposals. So there is some context.
There was, I just couldn't remember when that happened at like the hearing or the presentation. I
think it was in the written document, so it was there for everyone to see, and
I did it and I can't remember, so.
Yeah, and just so you know, and I intended to have that document reviewed by this full committee because I don't want to write something and then have you guys in the background shaking your head saying, we don't really feel that way. I think, whatever statement comes out of this committee is a statement, that we're all behind, so.
Sure.
Nick, I should also mention, we need to have the town attorney review this, and I'm trying to be efficient on their time. Our thought was, once the committee was good with the document, we would bring them in to do a review and maybe have to loop back to you if there are any questions or issues. Hopefully they're few and far between.
Yeah, I think, again, the council's going to get a chance at this as well. And I'm wondering if some of those, attorney recommendations might be better left in their hands rather than ours. I mean, I would.
Oh, fair enough.
But, that's my sense. I could be wrong. I don't know if the rest of the committee wants to revisit something that an attorney says we can't, the town attorney says we can't really do or must change.
Yeah, I don't expect they'll necessarily say that you can't do it. They might offer some alternative language to either comply with statute or to, tighten the language up.
And I
But
think
you're
that recommendation should be taken alongside our recommendation for the council to digest. That's my personal opinion. And
Fair enough. I'm just saying past committees have had the support and the involvement of town attorneys.
Jean Marie?
Yeah, I have a question, and I should know the answer to this, but I don't. So when it leaves this committee and it goes to council, can the council can choose what they want to change or not change? Is that correct, Tom? In the charter. And then if they choose what they choose to accept for changes to the charter has to go out to referendum?
Yes, I mean, the council has no authority. The only way to change the charter is by the voters. So
Yeah, well,
Yes.
that's what I just wanted to make sure I'm clarifying for everybody and myself included. Okay, all right.
But the distinction there is the council can choose to accept some, all, or none
Right,
of your comments. That's their prerogative.
correct. That's right. Okay,
And my recollection is the ballot has each item separately.
yes.
They have to vote separately. Okay.
It does.
Allison?
Just one more process question. So once it goes to council and the council decides to accept or reject recommendations, is there any public input on this, or it's pretty much between the committee to the council and then to referendum if council accepts certain changes?
Well, the council at the very least has to approve the ballot. So there will be a public vote, and as you're well aware, a public vote has, public involvement is associated with it. So at the very least, there'll be that. I'm not sure. My sense is the council will probably try to workshop this. Just, the nature of this work lends itself well to kind of more informal discussion than the, council informal setting. And there again, the councils seemed very willing to provide an opportunity for public involvement, even in workshops.
Thank you.
I might add too, and tell me if I'm wrong, Tom, as you said correctly, the council can adopt some or none, but they can also suggest their own changes outside this committee.
I believe that's correct, Tony.
I believe that's true, yes.
Because I think the council can also send out for vote changes to the charter in between the 10 years that doesn't even go to a charter committee.
They can do administrative, yes.
Yeah.
That goes to the voters. They have done that.
And I move that we have Richard Silkman do a check of any document.
He's good at it.
Yes.
My grandmother would appreciate that, Mike. She was an English teacher and taught me very well.
Just if I could, it sounds like we're not going to proceed further tonight, and I certainly agree with that, but I'm curious as to the subcommittee, who was on the one that reviewed budget, Article 5. I just have some questions, and so I don't take up the committee's time, it may be helpful if I reach out to committee members.
That was Annalee and me, Tom.
Okay.
Rick.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Okay, Annalee, did I hear you with a motion to adjourn?
I did.
Did I hear a second from somebody out there?
You did.
I did. Tony, could you call it?
Well done.
Allison Bristol,
Yes.
Mike Wood,
Yes.
Richard Silkman,
Yes.
Annalee Rosenblatt,
Yes.
Mary Starr, Mike Stevenson,
Yes.
Karen Shoup,
Yes.
and Nick McGee.
Yes. Thank you all very much tonight. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Good night.
Thank you for all of your time.
Great
Thanks.
work. Nick, can you stop sharing?
Yes, I can.
Just so I can close this
There we
out?
go. I'm still closing tabs on my end.
I know. All
Thanks, everyone.
right, I'm gonna